This is a lecture on the sociological imagination. This is a foundational idea within sociology, and week 3 and 4 are the times where we really get into exploring it, but it carries throughout the whole semester. And if you take away anything from the class, I hope you take away this ability to use your sociological imagination. And what that means, we are about to learn. So, C. Wright Mills was one of the most famous sociologists. He's really thought of as a transition from classic sociology to modern sociology. You don't need to know that. That doesn't matter. He died when he was relatively young, as you can see. He only lived from 1916 to 1962. So if we do the math really quickly, that would be 46, right? So not that old. Died from a form of cancer, not from a motorcycle-related accident. In 1959, he wrote The Sociological Imagination, still held up as one of the most important books within sociology. And what I want to do in this lecture is make sure you're following along with the reading. The reading is on Blackboard. It's called The Promise of Sociology, and we're reading the chapter where he explains what the sociological imagination is. So right in the very beginning, it's a short reading, only 3 pages. I didn't give you the whole chapter. I just gave you a tiny section. Right from the very beginning, he says there's this feeling that all humans have. He says men, but he really means humans. It's the writing style of the time, which was gendered, right? People just said man instead of human. So he says, nowadays men often feel that their private lives are a series of traps. They sense that within their everyday worlds, they cannot overcome their troubles. And in this feeling, they are often quite correct. What ordinary men are directly aware of and what they try to do are bounded by their private orbits in which they live. He continues on with the paragraph. Going to the next one. Underlying their sense of being trapped are seemingly impersonal changes in the very structure of continent-wide societies. The facts of contemporary history are also facts about the success and failures of individual men and women. When a society is industrialized, a peasant becomes a worker. A feudal lord is liquidated or becomes a businessman. When classes rise or fall, a man is employed or underemployed. When the rate of investment goes up or down, a man takes new heart or goes broke. When war happens, an insurance salesman becomes a rocket launcher. A store clerk a radar man. A wife lives alone. A child grows up without a father. Neither the life of an individual nor the history of a society can be understood without understanding both. Let's think about what that means. First thing that's key here is why people are feeling trapped. There is some sense that people get, and I think that you're going to be able to associate that or think about your own experiences, where you have these ideas of things that you want to do or things that you should do, but you can't get there, right? There's some sort of feeling that other forces are guiding you, other forces are limiting you. So that's the first thing. You look around, you see what other people are doing, you almost see yourself as a spectator to their successes, and you become aware of the ambitions that you have, but you don't feel like you can get there, right? So there's something going on. Then he gets even bigger, right? So the first thing is we have a sense that we can't accomplish what we want. We're almost a spectator to our desires, to our goals. The next thing that happens is thinking about this bigger power of history, right? That's the point that he's making. When war happens, an insurance salesman becomes a rocket launcher. That insurance salesman had nothing to do with the war happening. War happens, they get drafted, now they have a different experience. Something large happens in society. Those, again, are powerful forces beyond our control. Think of the coronavirus. Think about all the massive changes that occur as a result. That is beyond our control. We can do little things within it, but we don't have that larger choice or power. But then he says something very important, and we have to keep an eye on this because this is going to return with the sociological imagination. Neither the life of an individual nor the history of a society can be understood without understanding both. He is not simply saying to understand the world, you simply look at these big giant forces. No, you have to look at the interplay between history, between changes in society, and the individual. You always have to understand the relationship between the two. Then he makes another point. This is a little bit further down. It's like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, paragraph 6. And this again, he's writing in 1959. Think about how true this is now. It is not only information they need, right? It's not just saying that the people at the time simply need to know the forces that are impacting them. It's not that they have to be better read, because it is not only information they need. In this age of fact, information often dominates their attention and overwhelms their capacities to assimilate it. Again, think about how much more true that is now, 60 plus years later, right? It's not that we need more information. He's actually saying, he's calling that the age of fact, Now we could say we're the age of information where it's not always fact, right? So we're overwhelmed by too much information that we can't assimilate, and we're also overwhelmed by so much bad information that we can't even tell what's actually true. So this is even more true now. He continues, what they need and what they feel they need is a quality of mind that will help them use information to develop reason in order to achieve lucid summations of what is going on in the world and what may be happening within themselves. This is what he calls a sociological imagination. Not just knowing what information is out there, but knowing how to process the information you receive and knowing how to make connections between those larger forces and your own experiences. That's the sociological imagination. That's a fundamental goal of this class, is to build that in you. So we're actually going to skip page 2 and then return to it at the end. If you go to page 3, he lays out this very important concept, very simple, but also very important. In a sense, it's how you use your sociological imagination. He makes the distinction between personal troubles and public issues. And again, do the reading. He outlines these in greater detail, but there's some key aspect. The first thing is there's different causes and different implications. The thing causing whatever you're interested in, if it's personal, is going to be very different than if it's public. So the best way to understand this is a personal trouble is caused by individual flaws or bad luck, while a public issue is caused by broader cultural factors. He gives us a number of examples of this, right? You could look at paragraph right below where he defines trouble and issues. In these terms, consider unemployment. When in a city of 100,000, only one man is unemployed, that is his personal trouble. And for its relief, we properly look to the character of the man, his skills, his immediate opportunity. But when in a nation of 50 million employees, 15 million men are unemployed, that is an issue, and we may not hope to find its solution within the range of opportunities open to any one individual. If I live in a town, or let's just say if I live in Rochester, and I tell my friends or family that I was fired from my job, and they simply say, okay, well, how many people got fired? And I say, no one else lost their job. It was just me. It would be fair that for them to place the responsibility on the personal, on me, and say, well, what did you do? And then I would tell my story. Maybe I wasn't right for the job. Maybe I yelled at my boss. Maybe I wasn't showing up for work. That's about me. If they ask, well, what was going on? And I say, I was working for Kodak and they just had a dramatic drop in their stocks and they had to lay off 1,000 people. Well, then suddenly it's something bigger, right? Then we say the issue is some sort of broader cultural factor. That company went under. Maybe that's because globalization. Maybe that's because there was something negative that happened, bad press related to illegal dealings with different people in power and government, which happened to Kodak. Maybe it's related to a shift in technology and people aren't buying that type of film or that type of product. So there's all these different ways to understand it. But the key is you move beyond just saying, oh, well, that was you who did that, so you have to fix it, to instead saying, oh, something bigger is happening in society. So if we want to understand it and we want to figure out how to adapt, we have to look at different place. Again, different causes, different implications. Tons of examples of this. Let's think of one that seems very personal. Mary, this person named Mary, gives birth to her first child. She has a baby, and she decides to drops her hours at her office job from full-time to part-time. Seems very personal, right? If we look at this from an individual perspective, we would simply say Mary wants more time with her baby, so now she works part-time. Completely her choice. Nothing sociological to really think about. However, we can get bigger, and this is key. It's not always issues and troubles in the case of immediate problems like losing your job, but instead understanding patterns. Is the pattern about the individual, or is it about something bigger? So we could look to broader cultural factors. We could say, hey, you know what? It looks like most new mothers scale back on their jobs to be with their babies. So something's going on. So then we start to get bigger, right? Many jobs are set up as if workers don't need time for family issues. That's put on, the pressure is on the worker to deal with that. Or we could say, maybe she's in a relationship, maybe she's in a heterosexual relationship and the father is not expected to take time off. That again shows a pattern. Who makes more money? Maybe even though she makes more money, she's still expected to be the one who stays home because they offer maternity leave at one job and they don't offer paternity leave. Very rare in the United States, very common in a number of other countries. So again, Hypothetical situation, but we start to move beyond just, oh, well, Mary wants to do something, to instead thinking about what are the forces, what is the larger historical and social factors that lead to that thing happening, different causes and different implications. There's two ways to see that something is a public issue and not a personal trouble. The first one, numbers or patterns. You simply say, how many people is this occurring? If I give a test in class and one person fails it, then I would say, one person, what did you do, right? There must have been some reason that you failed and no one else. What are the what happened to you personally, or what are your personal qualities that led to this? If it's 50% of the class that failed, well, then I'm probably to blame. Or something's happening on campus. Maybe there was some disaster and no one had a chance to study or prepare or sleep. Maybe I'm doing a bad job teaching it. This is something you should actually use to your advantage. Ask your professors. If there is a quiz question and only 2 people get it wrong, well then too bad, that's your fault. If 25% of the class gets it wrong, that question should get thrown out. It's a bad question. There's no way around it. That's not your fault. Something went wrong with the teaching. Something went wrong with the literature that was supposed to help you understand it. So the first way to understand it's public and not personal is there's numbers or patterns involved. The second thing is there are institutions involved. Now we are going to get to institutions. That's the focus of your in class this week, but we will get to that. To practice, obviously I can't check that you're practicing, but what I want you to do to make sure you understand this is just think in your head. Think of a personal trouble. It doesn't have to be something that happened to you, but make something a person-specific statement. I'll use myself. Kyle failed the sociology test. That's a personal trouble. Then rewrite it as a public issue. Make it a general statement. Kyle failed the sociology test, but so did 50% of the class. Then you could get to something bigger, something about that a sociologist might argue. Can you think of something else going on? Kyle failed the test because 50% of the students failed the test, and the reason for that is because of the stress related to the coronavirus. People just aren't able to maintain information in the same way. Don't know if that's true, but again, starting to think about something bigger. So take that as a practice. Maybe pause the video, do that. All right. So what exactly is the sociological imagination? There's a few key qualities. First thing, helps us see relationship between person, biography and self, and society, history, and world. We're already kind of laid that out. That was the first part of the reading. He's saying the key thing is that you can make those connections between something happening at the individual level and something happen broader social forces. What are the connections and interplay between the two? Related, you do what we just did. Being able to distinguish between personal trouble and public issues, right? Is it personal? Is it public? Different causes, different implications. Then you start to think about what are the social institutions or structures involved that affect our lives. That's the real sociological step. Again, that's what we're going to do in class. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining what a social institution is right now. Key parts of that definition. Society, right? What do we mean by society? Well, it's a relatively self-contained and self-sufficient group of human beings who are united by social relationships. There are distinct boundaries that set one society apart from another. We often think of a society as a nation. American society, Canadian society, Mexican society, Jamaican society. However, that's not always the case. There can be societies within countries. There can be societies across countries. Societies often share cultural qualities, right, that go together. But culture is a little bit messier. Culture shifts and spreads and travels a lot easier. Societies are something where you can say, well, that is the group that we are talking about. And then within society, within that group, often that country, often that nation, then we can see those social relationships. So understanding the relationship between the individual and the larger group that they are part of. Next thing we need to understand, and this is where I'm going to end. I'm going to give you a definition of social institution, but it probably won't make sense till I give you the examples in class, whichever day that you come in. Social institutions are complex social forms that reproduce themselves. Very confusing definition. Key thing is there's going to be these stable entities that we think of just existing. They just are, right? They've always been this way. These institutions that seem like they haven't changed, even though they're always changing. And we'll talk about what we mean by social institutions. Again, it's confusing at this point. It'll make more sense when you're in class. Key qualities of social institutions. They arrange. That means they bring together sets of ideas, arrangements, beliefs, statuses, and roles. They also socialize. The institution socializes the group of people within them to have certain values and beliefs. And the third thing they do is the institution performs some sort of function for society. If it did not perform a certain social function, you wouldn't find it in that society. And core social institutions are found in every single human society in one form or another. So we will go into the 5 or 6 dominant social institutions at the start of class when you're in person. But this is the setup. So the main thing to remember from here is make sure you do the C. Wright Mills reading. Make sure you have a sense of what a personal trouble is, what a public issue is, how you determine between the two. If you can do that, you're in good shape.